Okay. You feel good? You can start? Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So, welcome back to another episode of the Everyday Talent Podcast. Today, we're doing something different. Clearly, you can see this. I'm at Kyra's home space and home studio. Thank you for having me here, Kyra.
My pleasure. Welcome.
Yeah. So, for those of you who are watching this or listening to the podcast, Kyra and I know each other since before the pandemic. Actually, we became colleagues during the pandemic when both of us were working as fundraising consultants at the Good Partnership. And since then, we've gone on and do our own crazy, lovely, different creative endeavors. And that's why I wanted to invite you to my podcast and we can have a chat about what you've been up to and your creative journey.
Exciting.
Yeah. So, Kyra, you want to tell the audience what you do and creatively, professionally, and a little bit about your career.
Well, I, by day and sometimes night, am a fundraiser. I currently work with the Toronto Real Asian International Film Festival. I am also a yoga practitioner and instructor, content creator, which we'll talk about, and a small business owner of a martial arts gym.
I like how you just I just do this and that. There was a long list. We got to unpack that a little.
Yes.
Yeah. So one of the things that obviously we got to know each other because both of us do fundraising. But over the last couple of years, I've loved how you have this incredible journey with yoga. And I remember you really started doing that as a telling the team you were taking yoga course and things like that, and we had no idea what you're doing on this side of the job. And so tell us about that. How has yoga become your, if I might say, a grounding center for your self-discovery and your creative process? Yeah.
So the way I see yoga is it's a catalyst for any inwards journey and also a tool for supporting my mental, physical, emotional well-being. So in the past few years, it has been my saving grace.
Yeah.
And I've had some challenging years of change. And when I just also want to preface this by saying when I talk about yoga, I'm not just talking about the physical practice. In the West, we often perceive it as the physical practice when we think yoga, but when I'm talking about it here, I'm talking about everything that is encompassed within that. So meditation, mindfulness, breath work, its philosophies, the spiritual journey towards something greater than yourself. So with that, I try to incorporate that into my daily routine, and then bringing the philosophies and moral codes into my classes and just how I approach life. So that's overall how it's supported me, but to give you some more concrete answers to your question, yoga allows me to self-reflect and unlearn, past conditioning, programming from society or from life experiences so that I can build awareness and have that capacity to make better decisions and change for myself. And then within that change, it provides me with rituals that give me predictability and stability, a sense of groundedness. And then also we're practicing values like compassion and understanding and acceptance, and I think all of those things are really important when you're on your healing journey and self-discovery, because it's not pretty, it's uncomfortable, it's painful, so I think we really need to have that compassion for ourselves.
Yeah. I love all of that because you just kind of elaborated that yoga is not just an act of it's not a sport. It's not just also not just a ritual, but there's a whole philosophy around that is transcends beyond the action of doing yoga, but also translates into every facet of life. But let's take us back a little bit, like, cause no one just like nowadays we like hear yoga all the time, and no one just suddenly like say yoga and that transforms my life. What's your own personal journey with like deepening your understanding of yoga and, may I say, going beyond kind of the cliche of what you usually see?
Yeah, I think so. I realized much later that a lot of the things I was doing, like meditation or mindfulness, was actually yoga years later. And so it started with like meditation, practicing mindfulness, and the moral codes that are associated with Buddhism and Hinduism. And then I went to India and I started learning that yoga is so much more. And I was actually doing things that were considered yoga. And I ended up finding this course that taught about yoga in its entirety and the roots of it. And so that's kind of where I've brought this understanding of yoga is so much more than what we think of it is.
Yeah. And I love what you said that, like, actually I discovered that meditation or like other things I was doing in daily life is yoga.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that, because like before we did the interview, like click the record button, I was just telling you how like in my daily encounters with other people who, whether they're creative or not, like they often know that it's, oh, yoga is really good for me to, like, in terms of movement or like in terms of meditation. Like we all know the positive impact of yoga, but we can't seem to commit to it, or like in our daily life we get so busy that we brush it off and we think about that we need to roll out the mat and like do that whole thing, right? So tell us more about how yoga actually kind of translates beyond the act of what we think are those yoga movements.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest learning for me, was that you can be doing anything and be practicing yoga if you really are embodying the philosophies and the meditation and the breath work within your daily life. Like I was saying before, you could be washing your dishes and that's a form of meditation. Or just, enjoying your coffee or tea, that is an act of santosha, which is one of the moral codes of yoga. So there's so many little things that we do and don't realize that are acts of self-care, yoga, and we don't really necessarily have to go to a class and consider that our yoga practice.
How do I distinguish them between I'm in the yoga mindset or when I'm not in the yoga mindset? Or how do you distinguish it?
I think the question I ask myself is, am I coming from a place of love? Like, am I doing this from a place of love? And that's how. And these are all like concepts that I've learned through my training.
Wow, that's a powerful insight. And I'm immediately, what comes to mind is like love also means very different things. And there's the love of oneself, like for oneself, and then the love of for others. So I'm curious. So we talk about the philosophical dimension or metaphysical dimension of yoga. Let's like I'm curious if we were to follow you in a day, because you like wear many hats. You have a full-time job, you practice yoga, you run martial arts studio. What would we see Kyra's 1 week look like if we were to follow you? How do you juggle?
I don't know. How do I juggle? I am also a Virgo moon, so that helps.
Virgo moon here, the busy, the tendency to want to be busy.
And like structure. So I work from home, so that also provides me with a lot of flexibility. So I have my day job, and then I'll go into practicing, and then I'll go to my class. I teach about 3 times a week, and then sometimes I'll set aside time to like check stuff for the business on my free time, and when I'm inspired, I'll create content for TikTok. But for the most part, I'm just winging it.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, I love that because like, and I definitely sometimes now that like, so Kyra also will have seen my transformation of like becoming a coach and like running my business, like, right? And I don't know about you, but like sometimes I get this sense or perception that people think that once you practice meditation, once you become a coach, once you practice yoga, your life just like becomes like so smooth.
Yeah.
Or that's
like you have it figured out.
You figure it out, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like you have all the mechanism in place to sort it out. And I would say that social media is a culprit in that sometimes, right? We project this like image. So like I love that you're like sometimes I just wing it. And how like when things do become overwhelming and do become difficult for you, what is your coping mechanisms nowadays?
I make sure that I have like my morning routine to help me get grounded in the mornings, because often like I think anxiety can come up as soon as we wake up, and
yes.
So I try to make sure that I keep those morning routines and meditation and breath work. But I can't say that all my coping mechanisms are healthy. I really can't.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just, you know, like being with friends, like getting out.
Yeah.
I just need to find a way to just let go of these expectations I've set for myself and detach just for a short period of time, and that's okay.
Yeah, I resonate maybe way too much with that. Yeah, like maybe it's a work hormone thing. Quite frankly, like I wake up with anxieties every day, and then sometimes people ask me, friends know me that I have a pretty like solid morning routine, and I go, you think that I do that out of like my spirituality? I do that out of necessity.
Yeah, exactly. This is pure survival.
If I don't clear that stuff up, like, I can't go on with my day.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, so sister. But then, like, you know, when I'm tired at the evening, it's all like, I just need to let go of that expectation that I have like purity of mind or something. Like, I don't know, do something that is like fun and mindless.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I can't really have a nighttime routine.
Same. Maybe
I don't know.
We need to get more work hormones here. Yeah. Talk to us about like you and I have like a lot of offline conversations about energy management. And how do we be aware of like the different states that we are in terms of our relationship with energy? How do you bring awareness to that in your day-to-day?
I like that you asked that, because energy management is actually a teaching within yoga called brahmacharya. It's all about...
Seems like I have a gift if I need to get going.
Perfect opportunity to talk about. But it's all about honoring the different states of your energy, knowing what feeds it, what diminishes it. So for me, I think building awareness of like, once you know that you're, you know, losing energy or you have the energy, taking advantage of that and doing what you need in the moment.
Yeah.
So I don't know, for me, like I notice like different times of the month I have a lot more energy, so I'll take advantage of it and do all the things that I may not have done when I had lower energy. So honoring that fluctuation has been really important.
It's not easy to do that, like the honoring the fluctuation, especially when we live in a world that expect consistent output or consistent productivity. I see that you resonate.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Capitalism.
Yes. Oof, the elephant in the room. How do you, and I'm sure in your like practice of teaching yoga, you've encountered people who have different level, comfort level, talking about energy or being awareness to them. So I'm curious, like, if I'm sure in the audience there are people who are like, well, I don't know, like I just don't know. It's a new dimension to me. What's your advice for someone that is like completely new to bringing awareness to their energy level?
That's a good question. I think what supports it is meditation, or just taking time to be present with oneself in the moment, because we're often like multitasking or keeping ourselves busy, and that doesn't really allow us space and time to really feel our emotions, feel our energy. So if you have the opportunity to take that time, do it. Notice what arises, and then the more you practice that meditation or being present with yourself, the more you'll be able to access it to better understand your energy, I think.
And once again, meditation is not like, does not have to be on the mat.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
Yeah. I've got so many like people, friends, or like, because I'm also really big on meditation, and ask me like, what, I just can't start, or I just like my mind go crazy when I sit there and meditate. I'm like, oh, well, what's the favorite thing that you like to do and feeling flow? And I think going back to your point, it's, for some people it's going to the gym.
Yeah.
Some people it's cooking.
Yeah.
Some people it's like cleaning.
Yeah, oh yeah, I love
That's
that
crazy
one.
to me. Well, good. So there's whatever that gets you in that state of like in flow and being self-aware and peace.
Exactly. Yeah, it could be anything. Like so many people say, running is my meditation or my therapy.
Yeah.
So it could be anything.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely. I want to talk about the content creation piece of your practice, because I am a huge fan of Kyra's TikTok. I don't know whether you, I might be getting the handle wrong. It's the Peace Pursuit.
Yeah, the Peace Pursuit _.
I highly recommend, if you don't have an evening routine that's good and you are just scrolling your phone, you might scroll something that's binge worthy, that is also healthy. You make excellent TikToks, and
Thank you.
a lot of I know people who are listening are like, would be curious for two things. One is like, how do you make that not like a downward spiral? Because social media can do that. Second thing is like, TikTok is a new platform for a lot of creators, right? Like, what are some tips or like just advice of navigating that platform? Yeah.
Yes, yoga or social media can be downward spiral, but it can also be used for inspiration and ideas. And I think that's the way I like to use it, like fill the content that I'm consuming with the type of content I want to produce. And then for how to, start this TikTok journey, let me just preface this by saying I had 6 months off of work to do nothing but create
That
content.
was also a conscious choice. We get back to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was, pumping out like 3-4 posts a day, and of course, like consistency was, I think, the biggest influence for me. And I think as soon as you have your niche and your hashtags that you use for all your posts, TikTok will use that information to then determine who your audience is and where to push your content out to. But of course, like, to be transparent, now I'm working full time, I have other things, so being consistent for me looks like 1 or 2 posts a week to be able to sustain my followers. And I think that's, for me, I think with anything creative, like, you don't want to go into it thinking like with the mindset, this is going to get me from A to Z, because how inspired will that really be? Will people be receptive to it? So I try to do it with just sheer enjoyment and pleasure of creating something with inspired action, and that is the way I like to approach it. And I think everyone's platform is unique, and what works for them is unique to them. So it's all about making space to just experiment and explore, make mistakes. Because in the trial and error process, that's where you'll really like learn what works and what your strengths are, I think.
I love all of that. Like, so set up a consistency that you actually means consistent for you, that is comfortable, and that will fluctuate depending on energy and season of your life. The second is don't go in with the expectation that would definitely translate into some kind of a linear goal.
Yes.
And you're utilizing that almost as like a place of joy and inspiration rather than like this is, I must do this.
Exactly.
Right? And you, in the process, you said that you found your strengths. What would you say like is your strength on social media right now?
I think it's being authentic to my energy at that time. So if I want to be silly, I'll be silly. If I want to be serious, I'll be serious. And I think that's what works for me because I offer like videos that are on all over the spectrum.
Yeah. You know what? That's so great that you say that because that actually is why I love your TikToks. Because I feel there's like thousands of yoga TikToks on TikToks, okay? But even though I know you, right, when I watch your TikTok, I feel that you are like directly speaking to me. There's like this intimacy. Yeah, that it doesn't feel like you're hiding anything.
Yes. And I think we might have talked about this before, but like the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with just like being true to who you are and like forgetting about what people are thinking. And I think that reads well.
Yes.
On TikTok.
Especially on like I find that TikTok with like a any short form content is about that in that moment translating that little bit of like sparkle of energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We just got a social media strategy down here. Yeah. So, you kind of drop a bomb in that segment there. That's like I took 6 months off, and of course I know the context that like you ran through some major life changes in difficult years and a career transition. But I guess what I want to ask you is this: how did you give yourself the permission to rest?
That's a good question. I think I hit a wall, and at that point I had two options: keep going and harm myself even more, or just step back.
Step back.
And I think because of my energy level, like it was so low, I really couldn't contribute meaningfully to my work, to anything I was doing in my life. I had no other choice but to give myself that permission and surrender. But I think now that I have a better handle of things and a better like work-life balance, I give myself permission by just taking like mini breaks, doing whatever I need to do, and like the more I do that, the better I feel about giving myself permission to take longer breaks.
Yes. Yeah.
It's baby steps, I think.
The permission to give yourself to take a rest is actually something that is like a muscle that you need to build up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is what I'm trying to say, is like you're just building that muscle.
Yeah. And I think that's like that feeling of hitting a wall, and obviously different people have different experience of what that is, and sometimes life events propel that or work events propel that, but it's all universal to a lot of us nowadays that have like ingrained in hustle culture and work multiple different things as like creative people, right? That is like at this moment, I love that you described that it's almost like crossroad. You must make a decision.
And it's terrible that life puts people in those circumstances. So I just encourage anyone, if you can like do what we were talking about, like build the capacity to bring awareness to your energy levels, then we can potentially prevent that from happening.
Yes, I love that. That's a good segue to my last question today, is that for anyone that's listening to today's episode who is a busy creative, or just in general a busy person, from your lens as a yoga practitioner and teacher, what's one advice that you would give them for grounding themselves?
For grounding oneself, there are a few practices I have in mind. I don't know if we want to do them.
Tell me, and we can explore that. Yeah.
Something that I think is accessible to most people is breath work.
Yes.
And that can be really grounding, but also provides us with clarity, especially needed to do the creative work and to get in the zone, to the flow. So yeah, one of them would be pranayama, which is breath work. And then I'd have two poses that I wanted to share.
I see. Why don't you talk about this? So if you're listening this on the audio form, we're going to publish the resource on the YouTube video that accompanied this video interview. So why don't you tell us what the poses are, and then we will get into doing that later. Yeah.
A nice sneak peek.
Yes.
So the first pose is Dancing Warrior with mudra, and that is moving between reverse warrior and extended side angle. And I include mudra because they are symbolic hand gestures, and they can just help you be more present and connected to the pose. And the pose also brings awareness to the center, which is our energy center for willpower, discipline, confidence. And then you're also, creating your stability with your legs. So I think in that sense, it could be helpful for grounding and for creatives. And then the last one is Viparita Karani, which is with the legs up the wall, or just
I do. Oh my god, I do that lately. Yeah, we didn't talk about this. It's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
it feels like a reverse. You can't do a handstand, but you're
exactly. And you can just do it in
weird
bed.
synchronicity.
Yeah.
I was telling my
so
partner the other
perfect.
day. Yeah.
And it's so good after a long day.
Oh my god.
Or in
it's
the
good
morning.
at the morning too.
Yeah.
I swear we didn't rehearse this. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad you're familiar with it.
Yeah. Okay, so breath work, and then dancing warrior, and then we'll get to the move of I just call it hanging yourself like a half handstand, but not really. Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Awesome, great. Thank you so much, Kyra,
Thank you.
for coming on the podcast and sharing your journey. It's incredible to hear how that journey has gifted you your own growth and healing. And through your practice, and hopefully from today's sharing, that we are also supporting other people who are on their own journey.
Yes. Thank you so much, Betty.
Yay!